Welcome to another episode of Lead Ahead. I'm your host, Nadia. In today's episode, we are diving into a crucial topic of soft skills versus technical skills in the workplace. The aim of this episode is to help you steer your way through the job market without losing any sense of direction. With the job market becoming increasingly overwhelming and competitive, recent grads face that challenge of figuring out which skills matter the most. Should you focus on mastering the technical aspect or your superpower abilities? Well, let me tell you something. Both soft and technical skills matter, and you need to balance them both. I will be sharing some tips and insights to help you succeed in your job search. The structure of this episode will be as follows. We are going to have a conversation about some research insights that talks about soft versus technical skills, then move towards networking discussion, followed by job interview insights and experiences. Let's start with the basics. Technical skills are teachable abilities like programming, accounting, engineering, what you basically learn in school or hands-on experiences. Soft skills, on the other hand, are interpersonal skills like your problem solving, teamwork, your communication skills, and emotional intelligence. Essentially, how well you get along with others. They are really hard to measure, but just as important. But here's the thing. Recent grads often focus so much on their technical abilities that they forget about their soft skills. And that is a problem when it comes to job interviews. How many times have you sat in a class mastering the technicalities of financial modeling or strategy framework, but wondered, am I really ready to handle that human dynamics of the workplace? So let's start with a question to our guest today, Jake and Nita. From your experiences as an MBA student, have you found that technical or soft skills kind of dominate in class discussion and projects? And why do you think that?
Um, I think looking back at some of the more technical classes I've taken, like you mentioned, those financial modeling and data analytic classes, of course, the technical skills, do dominate in terms of knowing if you're headed in the right direction as a team and as a group. But when it comes to maybe delegating who does what and helping other team members maybe catch up on skills that maybe there's some team members that are more skilled and have more experience and other team members don't. I think those soft skills really do have a greater influence in how people feel and how things get done because technical skills can always be learned. But I think the soft skills is what allows people to feel heard, feel safe. And if you're in a learning environment, asking questions and doing what you need to do to meet your learning needs to also be successful in the course. I've definitely been in groups where technical skills have dominated and soft skills haven't. And you can, even though that's not the intention, but sometimes you can feel a little, I don't know, dumb for not knowing everything perfectly before coming to the meeting. And that's obviously probably not the intention of the group members, but the lack of emotional intelligence there kind of allows the team to feel that way. Um, yeah, that's what I have to offer. Jake.
Yeah, I do agree with just to kind of touch something on that. I've been in a groups where like people are really good at like things like financial modeling, things like that. But then I think this is if your strength is not in technicality, then this is where you have to bring your soft skills in. What are
Mhm.
you good at? Are you good at like organizing the team? Are you good at like putting things together? This is where your soft skills really should like kind of like come into play and really provide some value to the team, right? So I feel like there's always some pros and cons that you can offer. If you can't offer technicality, bring something else to the table. So if your strength is not in technicality, then just focus on something else, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's that's a really good point. I think every project I've had so far in the MBA program has required a combination of technical skills and soft skills. I would say most of the time it's probably heavier leaning into the soft skills range of things. But exactly like Nadia said there, I say if you go into a class like I've gone into classes where I am the complete beginner in the course material, so going into a subject like programming and coding, I have very minimal experience. So in those courses, there are students who are very experienced with coding and programming, and then I kind of have to bring something else to the table. So if I can come in and I can help with write-ups, I can help with like communicating through presentations and verbally, because I find sometimes in the really programming heavy classes, I think a lot of people go into those roles and those fields because they aren't necessarily comfortable with their level of soft skills. So I've worked with a lot of people in IT, and a lot of people in IT don't really love talking in front of large groups of people or presenting, networking. I know I
Mhm.
might be biased in saying that, but that's just kind of what I've seen at my job. Like people that work in our IT department at work, they really like to kind of put their head down, get their work done, and leave at the end of the day so they can go enjoy the rest of their day. So one thing that I kind of bring in school and even at work is I bring a lower level of technical skills, but I bring a higher level of soft skills so that I can step up. I can do presentations. I can speak to leadership on behalf of the IT team so that if they're not comfortable approaching our CEO to ask for hundred thousands of dollars in backups and IT support, that I feel confident that I can go and talk to leadership about that. So
Mhm.
I think that's exactly what you guys are saying is that if you don't have those technical skills, while they can be learned, you really kind of have to flex your other skills and soft skills if you want to make up for the fact that you don't know a ton about the technicality of it. So it's definitely a strategy that I've used because I took marketing in my undergrad. So going into computer programming and coding and really technical stuff like that is definitely a challenge for me as an adult student. So definitely leaning into the soft skills to kind of help make my way through the program and still contribute as much as I can.
Yeah, I agree with that. We all bring, a capability, a strength to the team. It's just that we have to be vocal about them. We have to communicate those capabilities that we have because other team members may not know. Even if we're not communicating, they wouldn't know, right? So I've read this Harvard research by Charles Mann that shows that kind of discovered that 85% of your career success is contributed to strong soft skills, while only 15% is linked to technical skills. So imagine really knowing that soft skills are so important for more than like what 100 years now, yet people still neglect to focus on improving that qualities like communication, self-awareness, adaptability, and relationship management and social awareness. And it's not just Harvard in that case, it's also LinkedIn. Recent LinkedIn survey show that employers rank soft skills linked like communication, adaptability as some of the most important qualities that they look for. Because employees don't want to constantly, babysit individuals and micromanage them. They want people to be self-reliant. They want to hire individuals that are self-sufficient, who can take initiative without needing constant guidance. And so with that, let me ask you a question. What do you think that contributes to the perception that hard skills are more valuable than soft skills in the hiring process?
Think it's just looking at, that job posting when you're starting your job search, right? And you're looking at their technical skills. Like I don't really think a lot of job postings will say, oh, you need to be good at, you know, having empathy or being a good listener, and like everyone's going to think that they're good at being working in high stress situations and working well in a team, but those are such vague statements that even if part of it is on a job posting, you're going to glaze over them real quick. You're just going to go for the technical skills, the stuff that sounds really cool and fancy, stuff that you've been to school for and really paid a lot of money for. So I think that just makes it seem like it's more important because, well, if you can't do this, then you're not suited for the job. So I think it's maybe just finding that balance. But I think when you're in that mindset of finding what you're qualified for, most of the times you're aligning those with your technical skills because those are pretty black and white, I would say. Like you either know how to do something or you don't. Whereas a lot of the softer skills are kind of on a continuum, and you kind of grow with them ideally, or you have a lot of practice in one area. Maybe you've worked in a place where you've had to practice a lot of empathy and active listening, and maybe you haven't had the chance to practice other soft skills. So I think it really just depends on your experience and your qualifications when you're starting that hunt.
That's very true. I feel like almost every job posting that I've read in the past 5 years has been very technical focused. So it's like you need to have 5+ years experience as an analyst. You need to have level 2 intermediate skills in SQL. You need to have tier 1, tier 2 help desk experience. And it's like that is really what stands out for me when I'm reading a job posting is like I'm checking these things off. And if I can check off 8 out of 10 of them, I'm like, okay, maybe I can apply to the job. So I feel like even when I was applying for jobs after COVID, when I was laid off from a prior job, that's what I was looking for. I was looking at, do I meet the technical requirements? But then after starting the MBA program and like talking to hiring managers and talking to people who are in HR, it's good if you check those boxes for technical skills, but the most important thing is that you go into an interview with the attitude that the hiring manager is looking for. If you go in and you only check 4 out of the 10 technical skill boxes, but you can go in, show that you're a positive learner, that you have the ability to learn things that you don't know, then that makes up for even if you came in with 10 out of 10 technical skills, but with a not so great attitude about learning new things and just thinking you're the best and that they'd be lucky to have you kind of attitude, then they would much rather hire the person with the positive attitude and 4 out of 10 technical skills because they know that that person can be taught and developed and that soft skills cannot be taught and developed as quickly and as easily as technical skills can.
Yeah,
I agree. I feel like, as employers come across a lot of resumes nowadays, and they're all very good resumes. Like they have like all the experience needed, all the technical skills that are required for the role. But I feel like when you sit in that interview, how you present yourself as an individual really makes kind of distinguishes you from the other candidates, right? So that's where your personality kind of maybe you can leverage that personality to get into that, maybe progress in your career, land you that job, right? So I think the hard skills can lend you the job, but how you use your soft skills to kind of secure it and retain the job is really how you balance both.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually went through the exact experience where I applied to the place I'm currently working with some technical skills related to it. Like right now, I'm an analyst at an aviation company, so I do have like the Microsoft suite of products down pretty good. I've got some systems administration experience, but I had no SQL, no programming, very little IT experience because, like I said, in this episode and the last episode that we recorded, that I'm a marketing grad, so I don't have a ton of computer science education. That's kind of why I'm taking the MBA with the concentration in data analytics. And I went into the interview and I was just completely honest that I don't have any SQL, but I've looked into it and I've taken some intro courses just online for free. And I think that it's something that I can learn and pick up. And my boss said that I was competing against other applicants who are experienced in SQL, but didn't necessarily have the attitude that she wanted. Like she said, some of the other hires were kind of cocky with their computer skills, and that they would just be a great fit out of the fact that they can code and they can get onto any computer ever and just figure out anything. But I kind of just came into it with I was trying to be a little bit humble, a little bit self-deprecating at times and kind of using humor in my interview. And at the end of the day, the person who's hiring you, they're going to have to sit with you every day for the next however many years. So they're going to want to hire someone not only that can do the job, but that they don't mind being around, right?
yes.
So I think that's also where those soft skills really come into play is if you can be a person that that person is immediately comfortable around, that'll do your job search wonders compared to if you can just check a bunch of boxes.
Yeah. And it's really important to just be yourself and like don't fake it. Everyone can spot on your ingenuity, right? Like just be yourself and hope, hope for the best. And I remember we read an article in class, Discovering Your Authentic Leadership. That was a really great article, and it discusses, the importance of like understanding your own life story and kind of learn from it. So I feel like by you kind of conveying your message to that interview that, hey, I don't know this, but I am coming with that positive attitude and I'm willing to learn, really kind of sets you apart from the other candidate, right?
Yeah, and my boss kind of had a bit of a heart to heart with me and like let me know that. She's like, well, like you didn't check the technical boxes, but you showed that you would at least try to learn those things. And that she said that at the end of the day, she didn't really hire me for my experience. She hired me for my attitude. And she thought that I would be someone that would fit in with like the company culture and be able to talk to people at all levels of the business. So just having those skills of like communication and a positive attitude and like collaboration and learning, in my experience, were more valuable than being able
Good,
to code 1,000 lines in a day.
for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah, so let's move on to networking. So the power of soft skills really comes around in networking. This is the stage where you can show that communication skills, how you articulate your thoughts, how you connect with people. I would say like we rely on soft skills very heavily in that stage, right? I want to ask you a question. What do you think is one of the soft skills that you think is underestimated when it comes to kind of building that professional relationship with people?
In terms of networking, I would say having a sense of bravery. I think in the past, networking has been tough for me because I don't know what to say or like I don't know how to initiate. Like I feel like once I'm like actively talking to someone and the ice has been broken, it's like it's pretty smooth, it flows pretty well. But just the initial being brave enough to go up to someone and say, "Hey, my name's Jake. Like, what's your name? What do you do?" I feel like that's almost the hardest part. So I feel
Mhm.
like that's the hump you kind of have to get over to be good at networking and be good at initiating with people in that kind of environment because I think a lot of people are introverted and even just building up the courage and the bravery to like talk to someone brand new that you don't know anything about and just start that conversation is probably the hardest part. And I know that when I first started doing it, I was so bad at it and I was awkward and I felt anxious, but it's one of those things that you can really only get better at if you practice it. So I know I've had colleagues and professors say that usually if it gives you anxiety, it's probably the right thing to be practicing. So I remember that was something that I also applied the same framework to presenting publicly. So I'd always used to give me anxiety to talk in front of crowds, present to students in my class. But that's something as business students that we have to get used to pretty quick, or else we won't last in the program very long because every almost every class in my undergrad had some sort of presentation component. So I would say my number one way to get over that and kind of get that bravery and courage is to just throw yourself into it and present as much as you possibly can. Volunteer for speaking things that are outside of class that are additional, because the more you do it, the less that anxiety level will go down and the less kind of emotional effort it'll take to kind of get past that initial awkward phase.
Right. Yeah. And it's, about being uncomfortable. And when you are uncomfortable, really, you know that you're putting yourself out there, you're working on yourself. If you're really comfortable at something, you're good at it. You don't want to, there is no room for any more growth, right? So it's when you have that anxiety, you feel uncomfortable is where there's room for growth, there's room to learn more. Having that curiosity mindset really goes a long way. And from my conversations with career experts at the school, networking isn't really about just getting something back from that individual. It's about how you communicate with them, how you kind of like having conversations about giving yourself your time and attention to that person. Be curious, learn about them, and don't just ask something from them. just learn from their stories, and hopefully you can learn from it, because we all learn better from stories, right? So that is something that I think students should really focus on. Don't think of it as something that you take from the individual. Think of it as something that you give your time and you kind of want to learn more. Is there anything you want to add to that, Nita?
Yeah, like what Jake said, like having that initial courage and bravery to just kind of put yourself out there. But one thing that I learned from one of the MBA Igniter sessions on networking was kind of go into that interaction not expecting, a job or a reference, just essentially you're putting yourself out there. So frame your conversations and questions around, them and their journey and how, maybe they've inspired you or what similarities you may have. Usually people know that you're reaching out if you're an MBA student, to, potentially network and potentially find a job, for them, with them, whatever it may be. But if you started out as just a normal conversation, getting to know them, it's kind of like dating for the first time, right? You just put yourself out there, you go with the flow, you don't really put too much pressure on yourself or the other person. And then if you vibe, it's all good, then maybe you can have another coffee chat and then maybe get into some of the more specifics, if you have like a specific job or if you have an interest in their organization. But I think yeah, it is uncomfortable putting yourself out there, but it shouldn't be going in, like first meeting, hey, I want this job, or hey, can you set me up with the hiring manager, or whatever it may be. I think that sort of takes a little bit of the pressure off, but I agree with Jake, like being comfortable in those type of situations is something that is practiced over time. It doesn't come
Yeah,
over.
100%. I agree. And if you want a motivation, like if you want to be motivated to be going to these networking sessions, and the one thing that maybe you can focus on, okay, what value it brings to me, think of it as, a way to kind of sharpen your skills like communication, persuasion, and confidence, by sitting in front of a stranger and kind of engaging in that, meaningful conversation. It's a way for you to kind of develop yourself as well without necessarily getting a job back, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I have not been very good for attending the networking sessions so far at Heskane
Mhm.
because mostly my initial thought when I first started was, why would I go to those? I have a job. But at the end of the day, networking is not always about looking for a job. It's about building up that network of people around you so you can help them in the future. They can maybe help you because at the end of the day, you're not going to likely be in your one job for your entire life. I think there's a lot of statistics now that people of our age and generation move around jobs quite a bit. So I feel like I've been biased because I have a job currently, but I think I need to get back out there just so I can keep those skills sharp and I can keep practicing. And just because I have a job doesn't mean I'm not going to need my network in the future if I decide to change industries or change positions, something like that. So that's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to the job interview. We've talked a little bit about, passing that first stage of like getting that interview. So outlining your technical skills on the resume, and now you're sitting in front of a hiring manager. You're kind of like showing that you're using the soft skills to communicate why you deserve the job or why you would be good at it, right? Um, in your experience, how do you think hiring manager assess soft skills in candidates, especially in technical roles? Let's say in an engineering role, it's very technical focus, but why do you think a lot of I've noticed a lot of our like MBA students are coming from engineering background. Why do you think that would be the case?
Yeah, that's a good question because I've also noticed a large proportion of engineers in our cohort, mostly because I can see they have the iron pinky ring on. It's a pretty good indicator. But yeah, I from the engineers that I've talked to in our program, they they went through their undergrads really focused on studying, and they kind of had to because of how difficult the coursework was. But then kind of just putting their head down and just getting through their undergrad, they didn't necessarily have as much time for networking or developing soft skills. So I think that's kind of been a common theme for the engineers that I've talked to, is that the MBA is largely not only a way to make themselves more competitive in the marketplace and get a little bit more of business acumen on their technical side, but
Mhm.
also because they haven't had that opportunity to build these big networks. And if you just kind of put your head down and get the work done throughout your undergrad, sure, you'll graduate on time in 4 years, but you'll come out of it with maybe a not so excellent network. You might come out of it with less business acumen than you were hoping for, and then you might struggle with the job search because you're kind of applying to as many positions as you can. You check all the technical boxes, but then you look and you're like, oh, who am I going to put for a reference? Do I know anyone that works at this company that I can have a coffee with and sit down with before I go on this interview? So I've talked to not even just engineers, I've talked to a lot of people that I went to school with in undergrad, and they were so focused on finishing in 4 years that they forgot to kind of think about, well, what happens after that 4 years? Like I I wasn't super concerned with how quickly I was going to finish my program. I took 6 years, but ended up taking some co-op programs, and I didn't do my first co-op until my fifth year. But the co-op programs and networking and getting that job experience in my undergrad is definitely what allowed me to get jobs when I graduated 6 years later. So
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a little bit different than the engineer circumstances that we're seeing in our MBA, but I think it kind of ties together that you don't want to rush, you don't want to just focus on technical skills because at the end of the day, when you are looking for a job after school, after your undergrad, sure those technical skills will come in very handy because you'll be able to check all the boxes on the job posting, but I would really caution people to take your time. You don't have to finish in the 4 years. Take the extra 2 years if it means that you're going to get job experience or if it means you're going to join a couple extracurricular clubs that take up maybe a couple class slots worth of your time, but that actually help you develop those soft skills in the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your take on that. I feel like, you know, people get caught up in technical jargons very often, and employers are really looking for individuals who are actively engaged in the work rather than just simply going through the motions, right? They want team members who take initiatives, asking questions, maybe volunteering for new projects, participating in different programs. Like, how are they? So even if they perform a job, like, how are they collaborating with other people in like completing this project or getting to that end goal, right? So really all of these kind of skills come into play to performing the job at the end of the day. So, and like lack of engagement is all something that I've noticed in my previous job where people are just simply just existing to do the job and then doing their 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 and then leaving for the day without having any sort of like meaningful communication or connections with the people around them. So you barely even notice that these people in like um you barely notice that these people are even in the organizations. Like I've had an instance where an individual was working there for a year that I honestly did not even notice their presence there. So it's really important to be just engaged, not just to exist to do the job, but like exist to connect with people, network with people, and just bring, you have a diverse perspective when you get into conversations with other people and learn from them. Well, this is it for today's episode of Lead Ahead. Whether you're a recent grad getting ready for your first interview or someone looking to just pivot, remember that both soft and technical skills are key. Focus on balancing them in your answer, and you'll be one step ahead of your competition. Remember to be true to yourself, be genuine, be self aware of your strengths and weaknesses. Work on your communication skills to better articulate yourself in meetings. Ask for feedbacks and be curious and engaging to foster genuine connection. Thanks again to our guests Jake and Nita for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to our socials and good luck with your interviews. Until next time, stay sharp and stay balanced.